The topic today is Escalar, the European Commission's most ambitious funding program ever. To present details, please welcome Dirk Paelinck, co-founder of PropTech House, and Rudy Aernoudt, chief economist at the European Commission. Dirk, Rudy, if you're here, you can plug your video and the stage is yours.
Well, welcome everyone. We are here today with a diverse public, and we have here as guest Rudy Aernoudt, as Sophie said. I wanted to talk to you a bit about today the Alliance of European PropTech Associations, which is a PropTech House. And first of all, let's define what is PropTech for the European Commission. What is PropTech? It includes all innovations in real estate and technologies and business models, and this throughout the complete real estate value chain. It also includes all the asset classes: residential, retail, office, logistics, hospitality, healthcare. And when we look at the subject of today, the topic of today, which is investing, in a strategy for investors, we define 5 segments that cover the value of the real estate, which is finance and invest, design and build, market and transact, manage and operate, and live and work. And you see some examples already from successful scale-ups in these areas. Now, why PropTech is a priority for all of us and also for the European Commission? Well, for 2 reasons. First of all, we have global trends impacting real estate: macroeconomic trends, the climate change, changing population, the rise in urban development, and also, of course, more and more complex projects that increase the need for regulation, tax regulation also. And the second thing that we need to mention here are the technologies that are in the same time impacting the real estate. Technology revolutions like the BIM, like IoT, big data, artificial intelligence, not to forget the blockchain, which is really becoming extremely important, I might say for the European Commission. And when we look then at the stages in European PropTech, mostly early and growth stage, we see that the vast majority of the scale-ups and startups are in a validation phase, which means that this is an excellent moment to invest in PropTech. Just to give you one figure, in 2019, a bit more than 3 billion has been raised by European PropTech startups and scale-ups. Now, these are all being assisted by the national PropTech associations and, of course, PropTech House. And the reason why PropTech House exists is that we are a non-profit alliance of the national associations. And the goal that we have is to standardize the fragmented market, to create a legal framework, and to scale up cross-border collaboration and to facilitate access to EU funding. You see here an overview of those 24 national networks, so really ecosystems that are driving and that are helping these startups. You can see here also the people that are involved. I'm very proud to be able to present them here for you today, because they are in their own ways and in their own areas very active in assisting the PropTech startups. Now, we started with the Commission. It's with the PropTech Startup Europe Awards, which was a competition. It's promoted, supported by the European Commission, in which we have now in the 2020 edition about 70 judges, CEO levels, all of the companies that you can see there. Now, what are these European National PropTech Associations doing? Well, the most important thing is that they produce market reports, which then lead to formulating recommendations on policy, on legislation. They execute surveys within the member base of real estate corporates and scale-ups and startups, which leads again to joint EU efforts. And not last but not least, they help companies from the perspective from the respective countries and area to expand in other EU countries and, of course, also internationally. What the EU PropTech House actions are towards the European Commission is also important, and we're just starting with this, in producing reports, propose projects, and look for additional funding for internationalization of these scale-ups and startups. For example, like the funding for projects between EU-based and Latin-based scale-ups and startups. And then we are organizing summits, of course, and then design and propose initiatives for the European Commission and the European institution. Now, when we look at the current state of funding for European PropTech, we need to look at, in a general way, the state of the EU ventures. And we see that in Q1 2020, it started strong in Europe because there was about 8 billion invested. Now, what is coming now is for certain a slowdown. EU startups and scale-ups and investors, they are tied to an internal EU market performance. They face liquidity challenges, which means that you will have more follow-on deals. I see already in Q1, more than 70% of the deals were follow-on deals. The new deals will take longer and will be a bit more difficult. And at the same time, corporate investors will be aligning their investment strategy with their essential business, which is completely normal. In the exits that we have seen so far, we see an increase in acquisitions of EU startups by non-EU actors. But I have a very positive message, and there's a positive outlook for European PropTech, because companies are now looking to improve the readiness of their infrastructure. They want to be agile in case, and they're looking for disaster recovery tools. Corporates with cash will invest even more, as some valuations make startups and scale-ups very attractive. The current investors who have already invested in startups and scale-ups, they will not let these fail. And then we have direct consequences of the COVID-19. First of all, it accelerates the need for PropTech solutions. It accelerates the exponential growth of the total PropTech market, and it pushes towards investing in PropTech solutions for actual urgent needs. I'm talking about actual urgent needs is really the moment that I give now the word to Rudy Aernoudt, because he is at the head of, even invented it, the most ambitious program ever of the European Commission. And he will explain this to you now. Rudy?
Thank you, Dirk, and thank you to MIPIM for organizing this event, which I like very much. So Dirk said, we like at the Commission the PropTech House and the whole phenomenon. Why? Because it's a nice combination of three things. It's the tangible real estate. It is everything about new technology, artificial intelligence, blockchain, etc. And it is, and that is the most important thing, it's the mindset. And the mindset, this is really what is important for Europe. And as you can see in the next slide, Dirk, the mindset is something which we see is not so very well developed in countries like France, Belgium, Spain, Germany, where only 4 out of 100 people are dealing with entrepreneurship. It's 3 times more in countries like United States or Canada. So there's a long way to go. And as you can see in the next, Dirk, you see this is not only about philosophers thinking about mindset is important. If you measure the mindset, if you measure the total entrepreneurial activity, you can show that 2/3 of the economic growth are correlated with entrepreneurship. So mindset is something tangible, just like PropTech is something tangible. Let's move to the next one, Dirk. Then you see that the basic thing what happens in Europe is you compare United States, we have a lot of companies that have a normal growth, 1%, 2%, 3%. We don't have the high growers, unicorns. On the other hand, we don't have those who goes bankrupt. We have less in America, so this means we have less guts. So we need more guts. Guts means money. Guts means let's go out. And the next slide, we have 2 main issues, 2 main problems. It's the problem of starting companies. Let's say you're looking for 500,000. And then we have a lot of programs, a lot have been done. And you see that we're really working, and the gap with the United States is narrowing. Now, what is the big issue now is once you get bigger and you're looking for 10 million, 50 million, 20 million to scale up, that's where it's hard to find money in Europe. And why is it hard? As you can see in the next slide, it's hard because the difference between the United States and Europe at the later stage, so I'm not speaking about MBO, I'm speaking about scale up, it's 34 times. You see, this is where the problem is. And what happens because there's so few money in Europe, as you can see in the next slide, the big problem is in fact that a lot of companies, they start here, they start in Europe, but we lose them. So the whole idea behind Escalar is we want the companies that are born in Europe, that they stay in Europe. So that's what we call the scale-up gap. 44% is leaving because our funds are too small. And that's where we come to the solution, which is, next slide, Escalar. What is Escalar? Well, this is a difficult slide. I'll explain you in 2 minutes. We are now in a pilot phase. A pilot phase, what does it mean? If a fund is investing in scale-up companies. So companies going for internationalization, looking for big amounts. Well, then we're going to add the same amount or less to the fund. So friends, you set up a fund of 50 million. We can add the same amount. This is what's called Escalar. In the pilot phase, we are using our money from the commission. What you see on the right side of the slide is we want after 2021, after 2020, from 2021 onwards, we want to mobilize private money, pension funds, risk companies, insurance companies to give us money and to get that. Today, we started by a small amount of 300 million just to start, to launch the machine. And in fact, the idea is that we add €1 to €1. As you can see on the next slide, it's not something like pari passu. So everything, sorry for the technical word, until today, all things we do is we put €1 next to €1 on the same premises, the same conditions, the same rights, the same obligations. This is the first time, and that's why Sophie said it's brand new, she's right, the first time that we invest on a non-pari passu basis. This means, sorry again for the explication, this means that the commission through Escalar invests in funds, but if the fund goes well, most of the return go to the private investors. So there's a cap on the return from our side. On the other side, if the fund goes bad, if it would go bankrupt, we are paid back first. So it's a non-pari passu, we call it quasi-equity. This means if you start a fund now and you have your Escalar stamp and you go to the private investors, you can say to the guys, hey guys, if you do a good job, you will have a much higher return because there will be leverage, not only on volume, but there will be leverage on return, and that makes the big difference. To recap, Dirk, so this is part of a big scheme from 2021 onwards, where we have now 38 billion called Invest EU. And so Escalar will be part of that. As I said, now we have 300 million, but then we will go to a big program. Yes, let's go to the recap slide. So it starts in 2021, but now there's a call, pilot scheme. The call is open now. It will be closed on the 30th of June, so it's open. It's a European thing, so you cannot set up a fund, for instance, in France and say, I'm only investing in France. No, it should be at least a second, third country, we would say, at least 75% in one, but you have to go to other European countries. Again, and what we say that the 5%, it's an example. For instance, you can say the first 5% go to the private investors, the next one go to Escalar, and the rest, for instance, would go 90% to the private investors and 10% to Escalar. It's a system where we try to be as much hands-off as possible, so you'll not have your official sitting in the board next to you. It can happen everywhere, so no geographical limitation. And as I said, it can be a new fund. If it is a new fund, it should be investing only in scale-ups, or it can be an existing fund that is setting up a side fund. And then, of course, the side fund, you should earmark some money in the side fund, where you put on top of that Escalar money, and then, of course, it should be financing for scale-ups. So the whole idea behind this, and if you say, is my file eligible or not, the whole idea is that you want two companies that are born in Europe, that have good growth potential. We want to keep them here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rudy. I'm sure that there will be some questions. I already got some of some people. What does it mean now for the PropTech community in Europe? I would like to emphasize that for everyone here. But first of all, it practically means that Escalar will double the size, at least double the size of investments that are being done into your most promising members, startups and scale-ups. Again, the 75% rule. It also means that when you, as a company, have this Escalar approval and is being invested in you through that financial mechanism, it also means that there's a validation to our third parties that the scale-up is among the best of the best in Europe. And last but not least, Escalar is not limited to PropTech funds who invest in the scale-ups, but from 2021 will allow a direct investment into an individual scale-up. And I think that one becomes very, very important, because right now, as Rudy said, we are only talking in the pilot phase about the funds. Now, what does it mean for the national PropTech associations? Because they have their roles to play. They will need to know that investment decisions will always need to be based on data, on market knowledge, on future legislation. So associations are playing a role of expert in the area, and they can also, of course, be the ones that have the knowledge that we gather on a European level. Second thing, we have unique access to partners such as Finova foundations, and that gives the national associations the possibility to get extra subsidies from the European Commission. I mean subsidies, because Escalar is funding subsidies on top of what Escalar is bringing, which is a great instrument if you want to invest in a company, and on top of that, get EU subsidies. So that's the role that we could play there. Specifically for the PropTech House in this case. So we have an exclusive performance on promising startups. We are single point of contact with direct cooperation with the European Commission. We help them to funding and we conduct surveys. And with this, I would like to give the word back to Sophie.
Yes, I'm here. I think it was really clear. Thank you, both of you, because that's really impacting information, I think, for the PropTech European market. Just have a question to start this round. We understand that the European Commission will back up the investment of the funds, but will the European Commission be involved into the startup selection? I mean that funds wants to invest in.
If I may, I think a good bureaucrat is a bureaucrat that knows what he cannot do. It's not up to a bureaucrat to be part of the investment committee. We are investing in funds. We are accepting funds. And of course, we go to a classical due diligence procedure. So the due diligence and due diligence criteria are exactly the same than if you want to go to private investors. On top of that, there's some political elements, such as you have to go to scale up, such as you have to go to different countries. But we will never, ever get involved in the selection on the level of a company. We will only say, okay, you go for scale-ups, you are going for the PropTech scale-ups for a country ABC. Well, that's your philosophy. We accept the strategy, but we will never intervene at the level of the company.
I might add a question to that immediately for Rudy, because I know that people are asking that. Rudy, when in 2021 a direct investment will be possible into one single scale-up, what will be then the approach?
Well, again, the main thing will be into funds, because we always like funds to do the thing. And if you go into direct, which is something people discussing now, there's nothing decided on that level. Just for the moment, everything goes into funds. Well, it will be from a certain moment, it will do like the EIB is doing, but then it will be a direct approach. But let's say the mainstream, 99% will be going through funds. So what we want to select funds in which we invest. By the way, if today you have, for instance, a fund which is co-funded by a public authority like BPI in France, for instance, or KfW in Germany, this is possible because this is first part of the equity. What's financed now from BPI is equity. What we do on top of that is quasi-equity. So this means in the equity, you can have public money already, so we can combine. But we always want to go through funds.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting question from the audience. According to you, both of you, what causes such a cultural mindset that blocks the development of PropTech in some countries, including France?
Well, it's a difficult one to answer. For me, in any way, I know that there is a lot of initiatives for this. I think that it doesn't really apply only to PropTech startups and scale-ups in France. I think in a more general way. I think Belgium is in almost the same case. We have not, in a historical way, been pushed towards entrepreneurship. Let's say that because I'm an old guy, when I was young, no one was pushing me towards entrepreneurship. They said, go find a job at a big company, go work for the state, and you will be okay for the rest of your life. But maybe Rudy can answer that one also.
Well, my answer is in fact one of the economists I like very much, Schumpeter, who is not an American economist as people think. He was Austrian, he's European. And he says to build something new, you have to break down something old. And I think we we are very good at innovating, but we try to keep on what's there already. And if you apply it on the real estate, well, we still try to go to our old business model, and we need a kind of shock. Like we are now all working on Zoom and having this conference organized by MIPIM on Zoom because we are in a corona crisis. Sometimes we need an external shock. And I think it's the same for PropTech. We should see that the business model of the old-fashioned, with all my respect, real estates will no longer last. But we have to say, that's now the time to move. And again, that's why I started to speak about the mindset, because for me, PropTech, it's not about technology alone. It's not about real estate. The third, perhaps the point which is most missing for the moment is the mindset. And that's something we should all work together. And sometimes a shock like the one we have now, it might be something positive as well.
Question also from Sonia, who is listening to us. Just to be clear on the terms and the words, how do you differentiate between startups and scale-ups? We
don't. This is up to you. And this is up to the fund that comes in and say, this is my strategy. Of course, what is a scale-up? We didn't want to have a strict definition saying a company that's making 20% profit, however. What we say, a startup is a company that starts, explores the market, does the market study, and then it starts working. So we say, for us, a scale-up has revenues. I didn't say profits, I said revenues. It makes for the turnover. And at a certain moment, you're making a turnover, for instance, in France, and then you say, oh, let's cover Germany and Spain as well. That's a scale-up. For me, the scale-up is a startup that already makes revenues and now want to internationalize or to expand. This is, in fact, the definition of a scale-up. For startup funds, we have other programs, which we are not so innovative as Escalar. It's purely co-investment schemes. But for us, a scale-up has revenues and wants to internationalize.
Clear. Another question. How can scale-ups opt to this funding? Is there any proposal sample, or does it work differently as normal programs?
No, it's first of all, we are looking out to funds. So what we are looking at is projects from funds. So those who can apply or funds to start with. Once we have these funds, we are in the process, we already got the first proposals. So as soon as we propose them, we're going to put them on our website, and then of course scale-ups can go to those funds. So the scale-ups as it is today cannot come directly to the commission, they have to go to the funds that we are selecting. And this selection process is now going on, and we hope after the holidays to have already the first funds accepted.
It is also important to know, Sophie, that the Escalar is, of course, not only for PropTech startups and scale-ups. So Rudy Aernoudt, he has also funds that will be active in fintech or in agri-tech or in space. There's a lot of different categories.
Yeah, that's clear. That's clear for me. I hope that's clear for the audience. Another question would be, is there a political willingness to have a strategy that spans on 10, 20 years to come? And do you think, mass awareness will change the game?
What will change the game? Sorry?
Mass awareness.
I believe, Popper said optimism is a moral duty. And I think what happens now, a lot of people say, let's go back to business as usual as fast as possible. I would say, let's go back to business as unusual. And we should think about to accelerate some things. We should think, how can you make things faster? How can PropTech, and I think Dirk and his European PropTech House are doing very good things, but I believe things should go faster. If you look at everything what happens on telework, things should go faster. So I hope we have now the mental declic to a mental mindset to make things faster. On the long run, no, on the short run. I think in 2 years' time, we should be good. And there again, I'm not a pessimist, and you see all the reports how much the economic growth will go down in the next months. And I never see the headlines in the newspapers, what will happen in 2021. I look to all the studies, the growth will be between 8, 9, 10, 12% following studies. So it might be one of the best years of our history in economic terms. So let's focus that and let's look forward. What can we do there? And we have to prepare today to be there tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Want to add something, or I have?
Well, you need to know. Well, getting back in
questions.
that question about long-term visions, you need to know that this Escalar program that is launched now, it's of funds with the long term, and so it will not go away in 2 years, and the effects of Escalar will be felt throughout the next 10 to 15 years. So I think that's already a very nice long-term vision specifically to this topic.
By the way, do you already have targets in terms of numbers of scale-ups you want in the, I don't know, 10 or 5 or 10 years?
No, but I can tell you, Dirk was so proud to say that I invented the program. I have to be honest, I didn't. I copied it from the Americans because you have something which is called SBIC, but the copy, I must tell you, is much better than the original. But if you look to their figures, they have now $90 billion invested in 180,000 companies. So let's take the same target.
More globally, how the European Commission could help support the PropTech sector in terms of acting, like influencing the real estate ecosystem to implement or to partnering with more PropTech companies in Europe?
I can answer that one before Rudy, afterwards Rudy, but what is very important that when you see what all that is happening in the PropTech associations, now is the moment for them to work together with the Commission and to start making legislation to detect which are the pinpoints, and from there take it and make this a way of getting all better, getting more structured, standardize the fragmented market, and then at that moment start setting standards that can be implicated or imposed even throughout Europe in all the member states. And that is thinking, I think, a very important challenge.
Well, if I can add to that, Sophie, I think bureaucrats from Europe, they don't know everything. So we have to rely on what people say. And that's why I refer to my speech at MIP in Paris last year, when I asked the PropTech House, please guys, let us know what do you want to make that this whole movement go faster. Make a kind of white book, if you want, or a green book saying, this is what you should do on reglementation, on fragmentation of markets, on reglementation of artificial intelligence, and give it to us. And then we have some guidelines, some roadmap that we can work on. So I would even repeat my thing today, and perhaps I will do it again if you invite me to the next MIPIM, because it's a nice place where people are together, and then we can say, this is what we should do. And let's make what we can do as a quick win this year, what should be done in the next 2 years, and let's look at 5-7 years. But I really believe that today the PropTech is where FinTech was a couple of years ago. So the potential is huge. Let's exploit it.
Okay, I think that's clear. Maybe one last question to be really practical. It seems that the deadline to apply to the Escalar program is June 30th. Is it possible to apply after, or?
Yes, because
contact to get the details.
What we do now, as I explained, perhaps too fast, we have now a pilot scheme. The pilot scheme is we want to work with some first files, and then the idea should be that I work with those who we select now before the 30th of June. I work with them to see are there some parameters that we should recalibrate, so that we change some parameters for the next period. And then, so now it's a closed call, closed at the 30th of June. Then the idea would be from 2021 to 2027, is at any moment you can introduce a call. So this means you can introduce a proposal from the beginning of 2021. For 7 years, it will be open all the time. So it might be closed between 30 June and the end of the year, because then I want to work with the funds which have been selected. And then we make it open for the next 7 years as a mainstream program of the Commission. Is it clear?
What I suggest is maybe to copy you the rest of the questions, because we have lots of questions. It's really interesting topics. So maybe you can reply after this session.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It was really.
By the way, if I may, we are now preparing as well.
both.
We are preparing now a frequent asked questions. And so from next week onwards, we'll have on the website of the Commission frequent asked questions. So you might find something as well, but I will answer those promised.
And let's say that next Propel by MIPIM event in Paris, mid-September, September 14 and 15, you will be there also to answer all the questions the audience will have.
Promised.
We will be there.
Great, great. That's good to know. Thank you very much for your time today, Dirk and Rudy. It was really great. I want to thank everyone to have joined this this session, and just saying that see you tomorrow, same time, 4 p.m. Paris Paris time, for another topic.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.